All throughout the day, there have been reports on the aftermath of the Russian strikes. In total, more than 120 cities and villages in Ukraine have suffered from yesterday's Russian attack alone. 39 people were killed. Now there's yet another rescue operation in Kharkiv. For every Shahed, for every Russian missile, the terrorist state will be held responsible, both politically and also very practically.
Well, Moscow, meanwhile, has accused Kyiv of conducting a terrorist attack using widely prohibited cluster munitions on the city of Belgorod, across the border from Kharkiv, as it called an emergency meeting at the UN Security Council. Local officials in Belgorod reported at least 20 people killed, including 3 children, some 110 wounded.
This dashboard camera was able to capture the explosion. Columns of smoke were seen rising over Belgorod as emergency services rushed to put out burning vehicles. Just about 40 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, the city was targeted by missiles and rockets on Saturday. Russia blames Ukraine for the attack and has promised retaliation.
The Kyiv regime, by carrying out indiscriminate attacks on town squares and committing this crime, is trying to divert attention from its losses on the ground and trying to provoke similar actions from us. This crime will not go unpunished.
A Ukrainian official says fresh strikes caused casualties in the northeastern city of Kharkiv, adding that the missiles came from the direction of Belgorod. One hit a hotel, the other a residential building in the city centre.
What a present Russia has given us for this new year. They are black souls, simply black souls. They bomb residential areas. There are people here. How can one do such a thing?
This comes just 24 hours after major attacks on several Ukrainian towns. According to President Volodymyr Zelensky, dozens of people were killed on Friday, making it one of the deadliest days since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of the country. This latest escalation rounds off a difficult year for Ukraine, with a failing counter-offensive in the east of the country and Western military aid slowly drying up.
Thousands of people rallied in Serbia's capital on Saturday, accusing the government of President Alexander Vucic of orchestrating a fraud during recent elections. The rally capped almost 2 weeks of street protests against reported widespread irregularities during the December the 17th parliamentary and local ballots that were also noted by international election observers.
Back in the polling station, less than 2 weeks after disputed parliamentary elections, a rerun of the vote is taking place in parts of Serbia, in just 30 of the country's more than 8,000 polling stations. That doesn't go nearly far enough for the opposition and its supporters, who gathered in Belgrade for the 13th consecutive time to voice their anger at elections they say were stolen.
People are on the street unhappy with the obvious election theft, which has been confirmed by international observers. There has been a serious disruption of the electoral process.
The crowd was addressed by leading opposition politician Marinika Tepic, who's been on a hunger strike since the December 17th parliamentary and local elections, in which President Alexander Vucic's party said it secured a commanding victory. Her party has called for a boycott of the partial rerun, as well as for the annulment of the original elections.
I'm sorry because I do not have much to say. And the only thing I can say is what I've said before. These elections must be annulled.
Representatives of several global watchdogs reported multiple irregularities during the vote, including cases of vote buying and ballot box stuffing. Local election monitors also alleged that voters from across Serbia, as well as neighbouring countries, were bussed in to cast ballots in Belgrade.
We are asking for an international commission that will show in detail the extent of the theft and supervise the clearing of the voter list and the improvement of voting conditions.
The opposition is urging an international probe into the irregularities and wants fair conditions for new polls in 6 months' time.
A French couple has been arrested in the southern Spanish port of Algeciras, accused of plotting to take their 5-year-old son to the Sahara Desert, where they would murder him. They were captured by Spain's Guardia Civil police force shortly before boarding a ferry to Morocco. Both parents are said to have psychiatric problems and believe the boy was possessed and needed to be sacrificed. He's said now to be in good health, being held at a reception centre for minors ahead of a return to France. After thousands of travellers were recently stranded by the abrupt strike action of French workers that shut down Eurotunnel, services again had to be cancelled on Saturday, but this time because of a burst pipe that flooded the tunnel under the River Thames that runs through the British capital. Vast crowds formed at both ends of the Eurostar, London's Pancras station and Gare du Nord here in Paris. Well, Eurostar said all planned trains for Sunday will run as usual. Here's a look at the chaos on Saturday.
New Year's travel thrown into chaos. In a particularly crowded St Pancras International Station, disappointed travellers digest the news that they won't be making it to Paris, Brussels or Amsterdam on Saturday. Eurostar was forced to cancel all 41 trains due to flooding in a tunnel under the River Thames, leaving thousands scrambling to change New Year's Eve plans.
I am just devastated. I just had a little cry. I just want to get home. It's New Year's Eve tomorrow. I've been travelling so much. My train here was cancelled. My Eurostar 10 minutes before it was supposed to leave.
Eurostar had initially only cancelled 14 trains before cancelling all services, affecting an estimated 30,000 people. Travellers in Paris's Gare du Nord faced a similar dilemma of postponing their trip to London altogether or booking an expensive flight instead.
They told me that there's a load of water in the tunnel, but they are pumping it out. A lot of the trains this morning, they're all cancelled, people getting refunds.
This video was taken inside the tunnel. Engineers working there say the water levels are now decreasing, but that the volume they dealt with was unprecedented. Southern Water says the flooding was likely caused by a burst pipe feeding the tunnel's fire safety system. It's been a particularly hectic winter season for Eurostar. It was just 10 days ago that a strike by French tunnel workers cancelled a number of trains, this time just before Christmas.
Finally, the two-time Oscar-nominated British actor Tom Wilkinson has died suddenly at the age of 75. He rose to fame in 1997 in the smash hit comedy The Full Monty, but an unlikely group of male strippers. Was also known for Shakespeare in Love, while his 2 Academy Award nominations came in 2 roles where he played Americans with huge gravitas in Michael Clayton and In the Bedroom. I'll leave you with this. Stay tuned for more world news on France 24.
Welcome to Bordeaux.
When you think of the southwestern port city, probably one thing comes to mind: wine.
But Bordeaux is about so much more than just that. It's filled with local delicacies linked to the history of the city and the region around it.
So what can Bordeaux's foods and especially wines tell us about the area? Well, join us as we discover this beautiful region.
If you ask people to name one wine in the world, chances are they'll probably say Bordeaux.
Bordeaux wines are known for their elegance, complexity, and class. Some people say they're the best wines in the world, which is debatable, of course.
They're certainly among the most prestigious, and in any case, there is no doubt that wine is the pride and joy of Bordeaux.
It's been very beneficial to the local economy. Over the years, the city of Bordeaux has flourished, thanks in part to the wine trade.
There's even an entire museum devoted to wine. It's called La Cité du Vin.
Solène Jaboulet, you are the Director of Marketing and Communication here at the Cité du Vin, this one-of-a-kind museum that was inaugurated in 2016. Why did Bordeaux need a wine museum?
Well, I guess you know that the history of Bordeaux has been closely linked to wine for ages, so it was just obvious that we needed a wine museum. But Cité du Vin is not really a wine museum, not a traditional museum, because the idea is to speak about wine all around the world as a cultural heritage, like gastronomy is an heritage, wine is also an heritage.
The museum is run by the Foundation for the Culture and the Civilization of Wine. How has wine been important in the world culture and the culture of France?
Wine has been present in many civilizations, from the Greek to the Egyptian and up to now. And in France, you're right, we have a particular history with wine. First, the climate and the soil of many regions of France are very fit to cultivate vines and to grow vineyards. And then it's been part of the history, as gastronomy is very important in France, wine is also very important. And that's it, how make wine so important in France.
And when you think about a museum, you think about paintings or sculptures. What in the world do you find in a wine museum?
Well, here you won't see pictures, you won't see objects. There are many screens, and there are many interactive videos. Most of the things are digital. The idea was to use new technologies to explain in very simple ways and words what is wine, what is its culture. We are accessible to anyone, and mostly to those who don't know anything about wine, but also to experts, and to people from around the world, because Cité du Vin can be visited in 8 languages.
And one of the cool things in this museum is that you can discover how wine affects your senses, including your sense of smell.
Absolutely. We have a big buffet of various aromas that you can smell and try to guess what they are. Aromas you can find in white wines and in red wines. And the idea is to make you realize that by smelling wine and by tasting wine, you can find all these various aromas, and you really use your senses.
The world of wine can be a little bit intimidating at times. Are you trying to demystify the world of wine?
Absolutely. The purpose of the Cité du Vin is to make wine accessible to anyone in very simple words, so that anyone can understand how you make wine, how to open a bottle, how to serve wine, the link between wine and art de vivre. So anything you could imagine about wine is present here in the Cité du Vin.
When you visit this museum, one of the best parts is the end, where you get to taste wines from around the world. But coming back to Bordeaux, people tend to associate Bordeaux with red wine, but there's really something for everyone. There's white and sparkling. Here are some fun facts to know about the Bordeaux region.
Known as the Pearl of Aquitaine, Bordeaux is the 5th most populated city in France, after Paris, Lyon, Marseille, and Lille. It's also a beautiful and exciting tourist destination. The elegant city center is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. However, behind the veneer of the hundreds of stunning historic sites and monuments is a sinister legacy. Bordeaux made part of its fortune from slavery. Between the 17th and 19th century, Bordeaux was France's second largest port of the African slave trade. Today, there are moves to grapple with the city's dark past, but traditionally the historical spotlight has been put on the region's thriving wine trade. Vines were first introduced to the region in the 1st century by the Romans, but international trade really kicked off when Eleanor of Aquitaine married Henry II of England in the 12th century. The export of Bordeaux wines to London started booming and has continued to the present day. Located on the Gironde estuary at the confluence of the Dordogne and Garonne rivers, Bordeaux is the biggest fine wine producing area in the world and France's largest AOC, Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée, which means that in order to be labeled as a Bordeaux wine, it must come from this specific area of France. Within the region, there are over 50 different appellations, like Saint-Émilion, Margaux, and Pomerol. With some 7,000 winemakers, Bordeaux is France's undisputed wine capital. 20 bottles of Bordeaux wines are sold every second around the world. A common feature among Bordeaux wines are the beautiful domains where they're produced, like the Château de Malray with its 17th century castle.
Bonjour. 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 Bienvenue au Château de Malray.
Merci beaucoup, on a hâte de goûter vos vins.
Eh bien, on va commencer par un Château de Malray 2019.
Quels sont les arômes?
Alors, on est surtout sur des fruits noirs de prunes et aussi des arômes de cassis. Et on a un léger boisé qui vient souligner ces arômes-là. Et on peut goûter.
Ouh, c'est très doux.
C'est très soyeux.
Ouais. Tell us about the chateau and the wines you make here.
Alors, l'histoire de ce château démarre au XVIe siècle et l'histoire du vin est beaucoup plus récente. C'est dans les années, disons, 1960 où on a commencé, disons, à implanter un vignoble là ici. On est à Bordeaux, dans la région de Bordeaux, on est rive gauche, c'est le Médoc. On est sur des sols qui sont beaucoup plus sableux et graveleux. On a à peu près 55 hectares de vignes là ici et on produit environ 150 000 bouteilles à 200 000 bouteilles par an. Des vins qui sont très, très fruités, avec des tanins qui sont très souples, très soyeux.
So you mentioned the soil. People often say that Bordeaux is the best wine in the world. Could the soil be the secret?
Alors, le sol a une importance capitale, mais la climatologie. On est dans une zone qui est océanique, donc avec des alternances de pluie, de soleil, des températures qui sont clémentes et qui conviennent énormément, disons, à la production du vin.
Bordeaux wines can sometimes have the reputation of being quite expensive. Are they a luxury product or are they still somewhat accessible?
Alors, les vins de Bordeaux en général ne sont pas chers du tout. Si on veut comparer, ils arrivent auprès des consommateurs entre 10 et 20 euros, donc c'est tout à fait abordable. Alors, comme dans toutes les régions viticoles, il y a des stars qui se vendent à des prix où il y a 3 zéros derrière le premier chiffre, mais ce sont quelques stars, mais en général, les vins de Bordeaux sont très abordables.
Many wine producers around France have talked about the challenges of climate change. Is that something that you've noticed here in the Bordeaux region too?
Je ne suis pas climato-sceptique, mais il y a un réchauffement, c'est indéniable, mais on a des périodes avec des excès d'eau, des excès de froid, des excès de chaleur. On a toujours eu ça depuis des décennies, des siècles, ça a toujours existé. On a tout un attirail pour pouvoir faire face à un réchauffement climatique.
So hopefully Bordeaux wines have a long future ahead of them. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Merci de votre visite.
And this being France, we have to remind you to drink responsibly.
Bordeaux isn't just all about the wine, of course. There's a lot more to discover here as well.
Well, a lot here revolves around the water. The city is built along the Garonne River, and the Atlantic Ocean is not that far away. We're off to meet the last remaining professional fishermen here in Bordeaux. We're here with Jean-Marie Hochkorn. You are le pêcheur de Bordeaux, and you're out here on the river, come rain, come shine. You fish according to the seasons. What are you looking for today?
Alors aujourd'hui, on va partir à la pêche à la pibale. C'est l'alevin d'anguille. C'est un tout petit poisson qui est un peu l'or blanc de la Garonne. Ça vient en direct de la mer des Sargasses. Et c'est des poissons qu'on vend assez cher, soit pour la consommation, soit pour le repeuplement.
The Garonne River looks muddy because of the clay soil, which is actually why the wine and the food are so great here at times. But actually, you were telling me the river itself is the cleanest in France.
La rivière a l'air sale, mais en fait, elle n'est pas sale, elle est juste bronzée. Et c'est plutôt une qualité. Et en fait, c'est le fleuve le plus propre de France, dans lequel il y a une vraie richesse, une vraie diversité biologique.
And what are the specialties of the Garonne River?
Alors, les spécialités sur la Garonne sont à la fois la civelle, donc le bébé anguille, l'anguille et la lamproie. La spécialité que je préfère, moi, c'est la crevette blanche. C'est une crevette endémique des fleuves, que l'on trouve dans tous les fleuves du monde. Mais il y a quasiment qu'à Bordeaux et qu'en Gironde qu'on a une tradition séculaire, donc depuis des siècles, pour la pêcher, pour la consommer. Et maintenant, on peut trouver ces crevettes-là dans les meilleurs restaurants de Bordeaux, aussi bien que sur les marchés. Et si les gens veulent la déguster, en général, ils viennent avec moi sur le bateau pour découvrir comment on la pêche. Et après, je leur fais griller les crevettes sur le bateau. C'est plutôt sympathique.
So you actually bring tourists out to discover the rich diversity of la Garonne. If you're interested, you can check out Le Pêcheur de Bordeaux. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
If you've got a sweet tooth, you're going to love Bordeaux's signature pastry, the cannelé. The treat says a lot about Bordeaux's history. You can find them literally on every street corner, and you can also make them at home.
Ce sont des ingrédients relativement simples qu'on trouve chez soi dans ces placards. Donc c'est composé de sucre, de lait, de farine, d'œufs et pour le parfum, de vanille et de rhum. Des ingrédients simples et faciles à réaliser. C'est juste qu'il faut le bon moule, donc des moules en cuivre pour avoir cette caramélisation spécifique au cannelé, croustillante à l'extérieur, moelleuse à l'intérieur.
And it's interesting that there's vanilla and rum in the cannelés because they don't come at all from France.
Non, ouais, ça vient pas d'ici, effectivement. C'est donc issu de l'historique du port de Bordeaux, qui faisait toute la richesse de Bordeaux venait du commerce triangulaire, donc qui récupérait évidemment des esclaves pour les envoyer dans les dom-toms ou aux États-Unis. Et ensuite, en échange, on récupérait donc du sucre et du rhum, donc le sucre de canne. C'est comme ça que voilà, le cannelé est apparu à Bordeaux, un peu à cause du commerce triangulaire. On doit d'abord casser les œufs, mettre le sucre dans les œufs, mélanger. Ensuite, on va rajouter le lait, on dilue l'ensemble, on met notre gousse de vanille et on rajoute notre rhum et notre beurre fondu dans la pâte, tout simplement. On va la laisser au moins 24 voire 48 heures au frigo et ensuite on pourra la mettre dans des moules en cuivre, graissés, des moules en cuivre, et on mettra en cuisson pendant presque 1 heure pour avoir vraiment cette couche caramélisée du cannelé.
So the cannelés have come out of the oven. How do you know when you've got a good cannelé?
Alors un cannelé, ça doit être croustillant, donc on doit avoir une couche assez épaisse de croustillant, et ensuite on doit avoir un intérieur très moelleux, presque fondant, avec cet alvéolage. En fait, ça correspond comme à du bon pain. En fait, on a cette couche caramélisée, croustillante à l'extérieur, et voilà cet intérieur bien moelleuse.
That looks delicious. Yes. Merci beaucoup, Lucas, and a big thank you to Maeva. Now you can make them at home.
Well, that's it for this special French Connections in Bordeaux.
We'll leave you here at the Monument aux Girondins, but before we go, a big thank you to our team, Georges Yazbek and Louise Morer.
Is there another region of France that you'd love to discover? If so, why don't you reach out and we'll try and make it the next stop on our culinary Tour de France.
And we'll see you soon for another episode of French Connections Plus.
Versailles, Mont-Saint-Michel, the Louvre are well-known stars of French heritage. But French genius and France harbours many other hidden treasures. The arts, gastronomy, architecture, as well as nature's wonders. Come along with France 24. Discover France's living heritage. From young apprentices to accomplished craftsmen and farmers, to Michelin star sporting chefs, meet these people whose passion for their professions preserve and drive French heritage.
You are here on France 24 and France24.com.
Fighting intensifies in central and southern Gaza as Israeli forces push deeper into the enclave. Despite international pressure for a ceasefire, Prime Minister Netanyahu reiterates that the conflict will go on for many months. Russia launches its biggest aerial bombardments on Ukraine since the war began and accuses Kyiv of a terrorist attack in an emergency UN Security Council meeting after it strikes back in the border town of Belgorod. And massive protests erupt once more in Belgrade, accusing Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić of orchestrating fraud in recent elections. Welcome to the France 24 Newsroom. I'm Alexander Orcott. I'll begin with the latest from the Israel-Hamas war, where airstrikes have hit the urban refugee camps in Nuseirat and Barej, where the IDF is pushing further into the centre and south of the territory. The Hamas-led health ministry has now put the death toll at 21,600 since the October the 7th attacks. 70% of them women and children, while 85% of residents have been displaced. With the latest, here's Emerald Maxwell.
85 days into the war, and Israel's offensive shows no sign of letting up. Overnight Friday and into Saturday, Israeli bombs fell on central Gaza, killing scores and sending hundreds more Palestinians rushing to one of the few hospitals still running.
We're overrun. We're functioning at 300% of our capacity. The beds are full most of the time. One bed is holding 2 patients at the same time. We're basically short on all sorts of medical supplies.
Israeli forces are pushing deeper into Khan Yunis and the camps of Nuseirat and Barej in central Gaza. But they continue to operate in the northern Gaza Strip too, releasing a video they said showed a new tunnel network discovered there.
It's a very deep tunnel network, deeper than the previous tunnel networks. This tunnel is different. It has an elevator that goes down a very long tunnel shaft.
The assaults in central Gaza have prompted a new exodus of people to the already crowded city of Rafah at the enclave's southernmost end.
I hope the war ends soon. Enough with this war. We are totally exhausted.
2023 was the worst in my life. It was a year of destruction and devastation. We went through a tragedy that even our grandparents didn't experience.
Israel says it's determined to pursue its offensive to root out Hamas, despite persistent international pressure to cease fire. Cairo says it's awaiting a response to the ambitious peace plan it proposed, which would include a phased hostage release and a multi-stage ceasefire.
Well, the United Nations has sounded the alarm after a further 100,000 people flooded the most densely populated part of Gaza near the Rafah crossing in the south. Palestinians living in constant fear of bombardments are also suffering from a lack of food, water and medicines.